set? All set.
Yep.
Good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the planning board this evening. Thank you very much for being in attendance. There's a few things that we have to go through initially before we get into our public hearings, so please just give us a few minutes. There's an agenda before you at this point, board members, and I'd take a motion to approve if you're good with that.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. You have minutes from February 24th, January 14th, and January 24th. Are there any errors or omissions at this point? If none, I would take a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. You have 11 A and Rs before you at this point. Is there anything that you wish to isolate out from the group? If not, what would be appropriate is they all require endorsement.
Yeah. Just waiting for anyone else.
Yeah.
A lot of these we've already looked at, a couple of them.
Yep, so is there anything you want to isolate out, ladies and gentlemen?
Not me.
Okay.
Okay. We wanna,
So I'd take a motion to endorse the 11 A and Rs, if you guys are so inclined.
go ahead, John.
So move.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. It's going to bring us that you have 2 secondary dwellings. Do you wish to isolate anything out of this?
Nope. Anybody?
Yeah, please, go.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great. It's going to bring us into previous plans, depending upon what you're looking at. 130 Pleasant Street, 0507, the MCD is going to be moved to further deep into our process. That brings us to secondary dwelling. This is Christopher Wenzitsky et al. On 13 Equator Drive. Leslie, is there anything you want to bring up? I mean, it's pretty straightforward here.
No, we recommend approval of all the previous plans.
Okay, discussion from the board?
Okay.
If not, then,
Make a motion to approve. You want to just do that, we're just doing that one, right? Or are we doing all of
All
them?
4 or?
no, we're just doing one at a time. We're
Yeah,
just gonna do
okay,
one at
I'll
a
make a
time.
motion to approve the secondary dwelling.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Yeah, they're all just a little different here, but, okay. And you have a request for the, next thing is the tertiary dwelling from Stuart Flegg on 6 Exeter. You have the request before you at this point. You have the recommendation from staff. Is there anything you wish to discuss?
We already approved this, right?
It expired.
Okay, okay. So I'll make a motion to, I guess, renew the approval? Is that, okay.
They get it, yeah.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Brings us to 7438 Goose Cove subdivision. This is for a security release and a transfer, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
request here is only to move $10,000
Right,
from the
right,
performance
right.
security to the engineering
Sorry,
escrow.
I apologize.
Yep, and
Yes.
we recommend approval.
Okay, I'll make that motion then to move the 10,000.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay, so that's going to bring us into the public hearing phase. If you're here for Reliance Way subdivision, Act Natural, Mass Medispa, or 8 Marble Way, those are all continued till April 8th. That brings us to 8277, which is the Clay Street subdivision, modification number 1. For the applicant.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I
sir.
believe I've recused myself in the past for this.
Duly
with
noted.
everybody, about putting papers on there to
And
recuse.
Are you recused too?
I can't remember.
Mr. Chairman, this is subdivision.
He was only
is-
recused on that other one, the buddings.
It was the other one. It
Yeah.
was-
He hasn't recused
I have a
for a
direct
while.
abutter.
It's just John,
That's
as far as
okay.
I know.
Well, Mr. Chairman, on
Yes, ma'am.
this, you may recall the planning board voted to reopen the public hearing because of
Right.
some somewhat commercial activity that was proposed.
Right.
That whole situation has gone away.
Yep.
The two property owners affected by this have worked together. They've come up with a plan, and we recommend at this point that you dismiss the public hearing and not take any action.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Is
so
is
this
that
was
what
the,
this is?
this was the reopening one?
Yes.
Not-
Yes.
Okay, okay. This goes back a little while now, so.
And Leslie, was that a special permit?
No, it was a subdivision.
All right, great, no, it's fine, just
Okay,
a little
so,
hazy for a second.
So how many do we need?
3. So we're good at
So-
current level. Yes, sir.
what would the motion be to
Dismiss.
dismiss this with no prejudice?
Yeah.
Or, okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Yeah, no, it's obvious, but
Nobody
still.
complaining now, so that's good.
Motion's made and seconded for dismissal. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously with Mr. Trudell recused.
Yeah.
Okay. That's going to bring us to 0919 Stephen Malu at 13 Hawthorne Lane. Is there anyone here for the applicant? Mr. Swain, good evening, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening, Brian Swain, attorney for the applicant. Jeff Blackwell is here as well. The applicant was on his way, but I'd be happy to move forward right now, and if he comes in,
Sure.
I'll have him to speak. This is a application to create a covenant lot for affordable housing. The A&R that was just approved is that plan right there. The A&R lot is a non-buildable lot that's going to be conveyed to an abutter down the road. It'll be held in a separate entity. As far as this application is concerned, we're asking for a waiver for a second curb cut. If you see right now, there's already 2 curb cuts servicing the premises. They are pre-existing non-conforming. I know that in the staff report, you received complaints about there being too many curb cuts. I spoke with my client, and it makes the most sense to have another curb cut service the covenant lot. So he would close up that middle curb cut so that there's only 2 curb cuts, one for the primary lot and one for the covenant lot. That's the relief we're requesting under that waiver. Other than that, it's a regular covenant application. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Oh, sorry, we're also asking for a waiver for the lot line setback in between the 2 lots, the internal lot line, that is.
Got it. Board members, any questions on this?
And you have identified the tertiary potential for the larger of the two lots?
It would be on the primary lot.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else,
Okay.
board members?
Is that what was on the,
There was a staff
consent.
recommendation there.
So, in case like this, Leslie, sorry, Mr. Chairman. if I just
Yeah, no,
wanna
please,
answer.
go ahead.
They never got an approval for a second curb cut, right?
No.
This is just, okay. So, I mean, I'm just looking at this saying, I wouldn't want it to be, well, they have to come back someday, at some point in time, if they came back for a second curb cut, you'd have to get just like a regular application. Is this gonna run with the property that they
So,
forfeited that, right?
so typically, second driveways are allowed to be approved without holding a public hearing, without
Right.
the issuance of a special permit, only in connection with a secondary dwelling approval. So that's the only time that you don't need a special permit. So in this case, if they give up the second driveway on the primary lot, then if they wanted to reestablish that, they'd have to come back
Like
with a special permit
right,
application.
That's right, that's my question, okay. So they're not forfeiting that, they're just giving it up for the time being until this is all cleaned up? Okay,
Correct.
Okay, fine. Okay,
Anyone else on the board? Leslie, did you have anything you wanted to?
No?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Howdy, come on down.
Bill Boyhan,
Yes, sir.
neighbor, 16 Hawthorne. I'm not opposed to it. Known Steve a long time. I'm the one with the apron right in that drawing. So what I came here was to make sure that he would either get an access easement or get rid of one of those driveways, which is what Brian had just said.
Okay.
So I guess my question would be, how do you police that, or do you require anything about trees, or that it changes, or how do you actually do it, that, to enforce
Part of
that
the
it happens?
conditions.
Yeah, but Leslie, go ahead,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
So the board can include a condition in the special permit that says it has to be completely abandoned and re-landscaped or revegetated, or, you know,
Okay.
whatever the board determines they want to require.
All right,
You're down here, is that where you are?
that's, yes.
Right
We
across?
have one access for my family house here, and so we have
Okay,
access for 2 lots right there.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, good.
that's it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Not seeing any other hands, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close.
All right,
Second.
special permit for this though, right?
Special permit, and we'll add a condition about the driveway being abandoned and revegetated.
Adara, congratulations, you may be sitting on a few of these, my dear. Here's your night. I'm very glad you're here, truly. All right, so the motion is made and seconded. Hearing no other discussion on closing the public hearing, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, yes, you're on this.
Oh, I'm on this one
All
already.
right, thank you, dear. And what's the, and you'll, like I said, this is probably gonna be true for the next few too. And what's the pleasure of the board on this application?
Motion to approve the staff recommendations and the second curb cut abandoning language.
Okay, do I hear a second?
No, second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion on this. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Okay, next thing before us is 1019, which is Clear Joe LLC on 16 Folger Ave for the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Rector.
How are
Mary
you?
Ann Hanley for the applicant. We are here this evening just to modify and clarify a secondary residential lot special permit that was granted last year, so that it's clear that the ground cover allocated to Lot A is a certain amount, and then the ground cover to Lot B is a certain amount. They still will comply with the requirement that the total ground cover of the 2 lots won't exceed the original allowed ground cover. And we also wanted to specify in here that the that the detached shed that doesn't count for ground cover would be on Lot A. I don't see that in the recommendation, but it was included in our request.
Okay.
So basically, Lot A gets the shed, and Lot B gets the additional ground cover.
Got it. Thank you. Questions from the board? Leslie, Holly, anything?
Nope, we recommend approval.
Okay. Public hearing is open, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone would like to comment on this, please. Hi. Come on down.
Okay, so my name is Jim Sullivan. I own the property at 15 Field
You
Avenue.
got-
Yeah, just come a little
Microphone.
closer. It's,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, go.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm Jim Sullivan. I own the property at 15 Field Avenue. And I would like to propose that no further approvals are made for this particular lot until Lot A is given access on Folger Ave and the access on Field Avenue is removed. I sat on the meeting here last year where you approved the divide up of the covenant lot. And the approval was given at that point in time for access on Field Avenue. However, no one mentioned the fact that there was no address available on Field Avenue for that access. So now what we have is that, and I found out about this because I started receiving mail from Danny's mail,
Yeah.
and I was really surprised to see that it was 15A Field Avenue. So during this process, it's now I feel like I've lost my identity. I'm no longer 15 Field, and I've got 15A beside me. So whenever, in my view of life, when someone comes in to divide a property up and do something like this, I think that the proper thing should be done. My understanding now is the second property has been for sale and an offer has been made on it, right? So someone has come into the neighborhood, done this split, and then is going to make their money and go, and then I have to live with now going forward sharing an address with someone, as opposed to doing the proper thing. And I know it's a proper thing, but my suggestion is that to put a driveway on Lot A on Folger Ave side, and give it the address 16A and 16B Folger for those two lots. Seems to make a lot of sense to me, as opposed to, leave me stuck with sharing addresses.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and last year when we did this subdivision, it was a specific requirement of the division that access to Lot A would be off of Field Avenue and access to Lot B would be off of Folger, and that the driveway that's squirrels around on the inside of the property would be eliminated. The assessor assigns property addresses,
Yeah.
and she has assigned 15A to this Field Avenue because there's a 17 Field Avenue. And there needs to be something there so that the police and fire department can actually find it and find the driveway. So that's where it has to be. I mean, I'm happy to go back to the assessor and see if we can get her to somehow change it, but that was the explanation that was given to me. Since there's already a 17 Field Avenue and a 13 Field Avenue,
Yeah.
there's got to be a 15R, a 15A.
Okay. Yeah, come on down again, please.
I just wanted to follow up on, the process that I've been through, because I wanted to become educated a little bit
Sure.
before I stood up in front of you guys, and
Appreciate it.
you gave me a big rejection. But I spoke with folks in the town. I spoke with Ellen. Ellen is the one who, given the fact that access has been approved, and this is my
Yeah.
understanding, I want to state that she assigned 15A when access on Field Avenue side was approved. She told me there was an issue with public safety, but I think my understanding after talking, I went to the police station today, and I also had a discussion on the phone with Robert.
Bates,
Bobby Bates, yeah.
Bobby
this is the
Bates.
GIS stuff.
And my understanding is that the public safety issue is that if we put access on the Folger Avenue side, that's fine too. I mean, that's not where it's coming out of these guys' mouth, but that's the impression I got. On the Field Avenue side, you could, just put a gate and make a nice, a fence, a little gate or what like that, but give me back my identification on my side and put the, I don't think there's a public safety issue with putting the address on the other side. Is my understanding.
Oh, I'm getting a headache.
Holly, Leslie, any thoughts yet?
This is like Cisco,
Well,
Leslie, this whole issue. There's a lot of houses up there that have addresses on the adjacent road and vice versa. And they have access in two different sides. This is not uncommon, but I think they're trying to sort of avoid that problem, maybe. I don't know. That's what's happening.
Ms. Alger, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Sarah Alger. I represent the person who's buying Lot B. And I just wanted to say two things. First of all, as sympathetic as I am on this address thing, because it is a bummer, I don't think it's really within the purview of this board to start worrying about street addresses,
know.
because if you start doing that, it's going to be all you're going to be doing. It's a major issue all over the place with re-subdivisions, number one. And number two, I don't know that it's a proper subject for this particular public hearing, because they're just here for this ground cover allocation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to suddenly start banning development and requiring new roads, and I think it's beyond the scope of what's in front of you.
Thanks. Point well taken. All right, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Attorney Alger that there's a specific scope to what's in front of you tonight and that you should stick to that. And generally, when, determining access to a property, if, the property owner has frontage on two ways, unless there's
Right.
a finding that you make under the bylaw, then, they do have some discretion there.
Right. No, I think we're just looking for the easy answer at this point, but apparently there is not an easy answer to this in any way, shape, or form. So, no, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for running the field with us on that. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to comment on this? All right, board members, what is your pleasure at this point?
Motion to close the public hearing.
And you are sitting on this again. Here we go.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously in the pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to approve the changes in the ground cover of each lot.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's going to bring us to 11-19, which is the Crestwood Circle condominium, which is 4A and 4B Crestwood Circle. Good evening.
Hello, Jessie Brescher for the applicant. Locust is currently a housing needs covenant condominium, and they're proposing to convert it, to terminate the condo and convert it to the secondary lot subdivision so that each unit owner would end up owning their respective lot in fee simple. It's compliant with all the, as to lot size, setbacks, ground cover. The one additional request is for a waiver with respect to the shared driveway. There's been 2 curb cuts that have existed at least since '98, and the proposal is that maintain as has been existing since, again, that time. Lot A will use the driveway on the left of the plot plan up there, and Lot B would continue to use the driveway on the right that's sort of the snakes down the side of the property.
Great. Thank you. Board members, any questions on this?
Just a
Yes,
comment.
please.
A couple of meetings ago, we had something very similar to this, and it was, I think, off of Russell's or some way, we're down there. It was almost identical in the lot and the circle. I guess my only concern with the second curb cut, and I know the other one was non-existing yet, so we made it a joint access off the one curb cut. I guess my only comment is, where is it in relation to feet, 25 feet or something from that curb for that second curb cut
To the
for
separation?
the covenant one?
Let me pull up the plan and see.
It's about 150.
Hard to see on that one.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean it from the cul-de-sac?
yeah, from the cul-de-sac, yeah, that's all. If it's not a safety issue, I don't have a problem with it. It was just the other one, this is existing, it's a little different from the other application that we had, because they had not cut it in yet.
I'm not familiar with us doing it from a cul-de-sac. Typically, if there's an intersection of 2 different roads, then yes. I'm not too sure if we've ever done that before.
Looks like it's 107.74, but I'm not sure exactly what the, what it's between.
I asked you about
To that, so it's well over the 25 feet. I mean, it's 107 feet from the edge of the right driveway, the interior edge of the right driveway to the property line on the left, and the driveway itself is, 12 to 15 feet, so we're well over the 25 feet.
Great. It looks like it's a fair amount. I just brought it up for discussion because it was a existing curb cut.
Glad I could read the plan, so.
There we go.
Yeah, this is a.
Any other questions from the board? Leslie, Holly, anything you want to chime in on? Public hearing's open, ladies and gentlemen, if someone would like to comment on this. Yes, ma'am, please, come on down. Hi there.
Good evening. I'm Denise McCarthy, and I'm at number 4 Crestwood.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
husband and I have owned our land there for 25 years, and the 2 existing curb cuts were there when we purchased the house. It's about 200 feet between them, and we fully support the division of this and the 2 separate curb cuts.
Great. Thank you. Hi.
She's
Come on down to the microphone, that's all, if you're going to talk,
that's
which is fine.
Denise explained it fine. I'm Mary Ellen Castle, one of
Hi.
the applicants. So I
Okay,
think we're all
great,
set.
perfect, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on this? All right, board members, what would you like to do? And Ladara, here we go again.
Motion to close public hearing.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Just,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to bring this up now because one
No,
of the
please. So
comments
sorry.
from the staff, and I agree with, is to find out which which lot
The
would
se-
have
the
a
tertiary.
secondary, tertiary. I'm assuming it's the larger of the two?
It's actually been
But-
waived and neither property is going to have a tertiary
Great.
There we
dwelling.
go.
And there's
Thank
an
you.
agreement between the property owners as to that.
On a 3-acre lot? You sure you want to do that? Wow.
They can come back before us
Okay.
if
It took
need
us
be.
a while to get here.
130,000 square feet,
Let's not
that's
reinvent the
a
wheel.
couple football fields out there. All right.
All right. So anyways, back to where we were. So I believe there was a motion made and seconded
Second.
to close the public hearing.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. And what would you like to do?
Motion to approve the change in the condominium to a regular tertiary, secondary lot.
Okay.
With staff recommendation.
Yeah, for staff recommendations.
No
I'll
problem.
second that.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. That's going to bring us to 1219, Martin Angle, 19B Waydale Road.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I am going to recuse. I sold the covenant lot that's next to it. That's a joint ad, 19A.
Okay, so you are going to be sitting on this one, and it's going to require, I mean, Martin, just so you know at this point, usually for a special permit, it requires 4 out of 5 board members to do it. Since he's recusing, that brings us to 4, so the board's got to be a completely unanimous lockstep.
I understand.
And so, and some applicants prefer to wait till they have a full board. So I just want to bring that to your attention. That's okay, Leslie's, go ahead, talk to him for a minute.
Mr. Chairman, what he's proposing is pretty minor, so he may want to just open the public hearing, and then if it seems like it needs to be continued, he could wait for a full board.
Yeah, no, I agree. That, again, I just wanted to be very upfront with you. Just one other thing for the record as well, too. I work with your wife, Desi, but there's no financial interest involved on my behalf. But if anyone feels like they'd like to tell me otherwise at this point, I'd like to sit in on this application. Okay. All right, sir.
Good
You're on
evening.
deck.
Martin Angelov. We're purchasing the front lot, a market rate 6,000 square feet lot, and we want this application is to waive the interior setback to be down to 5 feet. We have spoken with the owner of the Covenant house at the back, and he co-signed the application. He's in agreement, and the other change, there is a reference in the special permit of a footprint of a dwelling at 768. The dwelling we want to build on the lot is 936 square feet footprint.
Okay, great. Board members, do you have any questions on this one? Nope. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this. Holly, Leslie, you didn't have anything, did you?
No, we recommend approval.
Okay. All right, board members, so what would you, so do you want us to proceed?
Yeah.
And see if the full, okay.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And what's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve or to the setback waiver. And did we answer the tertiary question, Martin, from staff? Which lot will be allowed the tertiary?
It should be our lot, I believe, because it's the market
This is
rate.
a private, that's what I mean, it kind of,
Yeah.
it's not gonna fit anywhere else anyway, so unless it was under the house, it's a basement, so,
Okay.
okay. So
All right.
That's it.
Any other questions? So the motion was made, and did I hear a second to that?
Second.
I'm sorry, the motion's made and seconded. Discussion on the issue further? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Very good. There you go, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Martin.
Rolling the dice went the right way.
Exactly. All right, next thing before us is 13-19, which is John Dunham, 3 Equator Drive, for the applicant. Is there anyone here? No, that's... Pardon? Do you want me to hold them? Okay. All right. All right, board members, so Leslie, Holly, is there anything you want to throw in on this? above and beyond what's before us?
No, it's a pretty standard
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
R20.
special permit. It's on Equator Drive, an established subdivision road. We recommend approval.
Okay. Board members, any discussion?
These are
Yes, go
existing
ahead.
dwellings as well.
No, go ahead.
It's come up a lot. We just want to identify which is the lot for the tertiary.
And that's his,
And that's number 4,
the rear
but
lot.
I don't see that one is determined one or the other.
It'd be the rear lot. The second.
Yeah, that's
Typically,
what,
it's the primary lot because it has more ground cover available.
Typically, but
And
I
it
know
doesn't
that
get into the
there was
covenant issues that may come up.
Right.
So I would say maybe go ahead with that, and the person can always
Okay.
change it
Yeah.
if they need to.
I'm fine with that as long as we designate the second, the back larger lot to be potentially the secondary or the tertiary lot that would be available.
the lot, yeah, for tertiary dwelling. Got it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
When the secondary dwelling was, went through the process, there is an apron. It's just not shown in the site plan. So once we receive the amended revised site plan, it will indicate that.
Yep. Great. Anything else from the board members or from staff? It's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this. This is your night, girl. All right, what would be the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve the,
Well,
And
first
close
thing,
no,
public
sorry,
hearing.
make a motion to close the public
that's
hearing.
okay, no problem. It's all good. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion for a favorable request with the conditions made by staff and also the designated tertiary to be the back larger lot.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Thank you. Next thing is 1419 Jean Pierre Latlippe on 76 Somerset Road. Is there anyone here for the applicant? Hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
Come on down,
Sounds like a game show.
please.
How's it
Come
going?
on down. Hi. You're,
Jean-Pierre Latlip.
thank
Sorry.
you very much. Is there anything, or do you want to just let us rock and roll into it? Okay. Whatever, it's all fine. So, board members, is there anything you'd like to discuss on this? All right. Leslie, Holly, anything you want to bring up?
Same as the last one.
No.
No. Okay. It's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone would like to comment on this? Seeing no comments, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close public hearing.
And
Second.
and discussion on this issue. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And what would you all like to do with the application?
Make a motion to approve the waiver of the interior lot line.
Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate it. You're welcome. Have a good night. Next application is 15-19, which is the Great Harbor Yacht Club, modification number 10 on Washington Street. Hi.
We're
How-
actually hoping to have that move to the end with Steven's other thing that you had before you, that you moved.
Yeah, sure.
So we can do this together.
We're getting toward the end anyways, just so you know.
Yeah, we'll keep it-
But that's okay. Yeah,
He's
I'll
still up
move
for
it.
his
Trust me, I'll move those two down. Not a
Thank you, sir.
problem. Yeah.
What was
All
the
right.
other one?
So we're going to go into preliminary plans at this point. That'll have two that'll come before us, and then we'll come back to these. All right, so first preliminary plan is 8338, which is Gregory L. Stone on 85 Hinsdale Road. Is there anyone here for the applicant? No? Okay. Leslie, Holly, go
You all
ahead.
should have received in front of you a write-out from the
Yes.
Yeah.
owner.
Yep.
I have one for each one of the preliminaries.
Yeah, we gotta get some updates here. What's going on? Leslie, can you explain all this?
Yep.
What's going on here?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
the subject property that's currently in the RC2 zoning district is included in one of the rezonings to go from RC2 to C Tech. So this is simply a preliminary plan to freeze the zoning under RC2. It's my understanding that, you know, the person's not entirely certain what they may want to do with these lots in the future. So I think that when you consider conditions, if you're inclined to approve the preliminary plan, that you should require the maximum roadway width and pavement and drainage and all of those things. And then if they do implement a plan later, you know, you can, you know, reduce that if needed. But just remember that the preliminary plan runs with the land, not with the plan. So the plan that you see before you can change, but they still maintain the freeze.
How long, 3 years?
It's 8 years
8
from the
years,
date that the
yeah.
definitive plan is endorsed.
Okay. That was 3.
So, board members, do you have any comments based upon what Leslie just said? All right, hearing no comment, then what would be appropriate is to, go ahead.
So if you're inclined to approve,
Yeah.
you know, the roadway width that's shown is shown at 40 feet, which is what's required
Correct.
under the subdivision rules and regulations.
Yep.
I would recommend that your approval letter, you know, require the maximum, and, you know, you can comment on
Yeah.
the fact that you'll reconsider that when
Yeah.
and if a plan comes in the future with something more specific.
Right, normally that's a letter signed by the chair, correct?
Correct.
All right, so if there's nothing else from the board, what would be appropriate is to authorize that letter to be sent from the chair with what Leslie has talked about, unless you have any other questions.
Just make that motion.
Yep, I think you can just.
You just said it, I'll approve it.
That's okay.
It's gonna be the same.
Just, you know, I mean, if you've got questions, this is perfect time, but I think Leslie understands where we're heading to with it, and that's why I'm,
The maximum imposed regulations, sure.
And remember,
ahead.
the intent of the preliminary plan is for them to lock in the zoning and for you to put them on notice as to what you may be requiring when they come in with a final plan. So the road width under the subdivision rules and regs, I think is 22 feet. If you wanted to, you know, possibly include on-street parking and other things like that, you know, I think we could write something pretty vague that gets the point across.
And this is essentially Pinecrest pork chop frontage things from the original, right? And that's how they're set
This
up.
isn't part of Pinecrest.
No, but it's like it. It's the same, the way they're setting it up.
Not really.
Well, why do we have
no.
those little strips running out to nobody at farm then?
Those strips have been there. They're part of the lot. I'm not sure why they were there.
So it's not frontage,
originally.
it's just, they're just there?
They're
Okay.
just there.
All
The
right,
frontage is on Hinsdale.
okay.
okay. Do you have any other questions? Because, I mean, this is the time to do it if you do. Okay. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'm totally fine with what they're doing. I'm just, we haven't done this in a while,
Yeah, I know we haven't.
you know? So I'm kinda, I know it's gonna end up being, in the end, this will
Yep.
end up being fine.
Sure.
It just doesn't look it now, but it will be. It's
Right.
just, like,
And,
this happens. This happens. It just hasn't happened in a while.
right,
So.
unless there's anything special you want to put in here, otherwise.
No, I
if
agree
they-
with what
if they
Leslie's
can-
saying.
Right, as long as they comport with. the rules and
Theoretically, if this
regulations.
was dirt, just dirt, this would be, you know, there'd be a lot of potential here. And there is. You know, just think of it that way.
Yep.
So it's just a question of what C-Tech allows versus what RC2 allows. And RC2 allows so much that we will be able to, when there is a final plan, we'll be able to modify it to be, let's just hypothetically say R5.
Right.
It'll end up being an R5 subdivision in a current RC2.
Well-
That's what's gonna end up happening, I bet you.
Whatever happens, you'll have.
It'll
the
be
op-
better than it is, than what's allowed under RC2. So I'm fine with what Leslie said. I agree with everything she said, and I agree with giving them the freeze. So
All right.
That's
so-
my
and
position.
The motion will include authorizing the chair to send that letter out
Yeah,
with his, yeah.
and that's
okay.
my motion.
Then I'll second whatever you said. Matt.
Okay. It's all right.
Say it again
So the
in 5
motion's
minutes.
made and seconded. Is there discussion of the need for clarification on what you're voting on? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay. That's going to bring us to 8339, John Walsh Jr. and Wendy McCray on 89 Hinsdale Road. And I think you're going to find this is basically the same concept, the
Yep.
same iteration beforehand with the
Yep.
same reason why they want to do it.
Yep. And
Unless-
I would say
unless-
make that same motion
Okay.
for the, with the letter signed stating the
Do we have to close?
requirements under the subdivision
There's no
control law.
public
Okay,
hearing.
okay.
Yeah, there's no
this
public
is a regular
hearing.
AR, previous
Okay,
plan,
and leave
I mean,
it
a
up.
preliminary plan, not a public hearing.
Yeah,
So-
these aren't public hearings.
So, same motion, same language, requiring the regular subdivision plan, regulations and
Got it.
And the letter from the chair.
letter from the chair.
And I'll second that.
All right, so that motion's being seconded. Any discussion on that issue? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Oh, we are waiting on two things at this point.
I did see your
What was the
Stephen.
first thing we
Mr.
continued?
Cohen, your timing is
Oh,
impeccable,
okay.
sir.
We on
Did
the
you-
one-way
did you-
cliff now,
did
right?
you-
It's upstairs, downstairs.
Did you purposely time that for dramatic purpose?
No, it was texted to me.
Oh, was it? All
There
right,
you go.
I forgot my entry music, but
next time.
next time.
Next
So we're at One-Away Cliff now, right? Or are we at somewhere else?
Hang on.
What's 108?
No, I don't think that was continued. I think that was just a permit.
Oh, okay, so what did we?
Yeah, now
you're
there's
on-
specifically two things that were held, which was 1519 Great Harbor Yacht Club and then 130 Pleasant Street.
Okay,
I
that's
appreciate
it. There you go.
the courtesy.
Yep.
And I'm going to take 130 Pleasant Street first, if you don't mind, because
don't mind.
they were first on the agenda and got moved down, so let's go there.
Okay, so I think
Okay,
the
there we
board
are.
recalls I represent a prospective tenant. I do not represent the landowner. Mr. Reed here represents the landowner. My client would like to do a wine bar, dinner restaurant there, and we're hoping that this will go forward. At the select board meeting reviewing the liquor license, the select board asked the planning board to comment on whether or not there was compliance with the parking situation because they knew that there was some rumblings and they weren't really sure what it was. And so I believe all we're doing here under the previous plans section is for this board to respond to the inquiry by the select board. It's not a special permit hearing. It's not an application before the board. I would suggest to the board, and I've talked to the staff about this a little bit, and I don't know if you saw the email I sent or not, but that there are two ways this could be found to be in compliance. The first is through the issuance of, or through the use of the 2007 permit, which is in existence and not under a challenge. And then the second way is that I think that as of right, it could be done under the way the bylaw is written now. And we had I had some disagreement with the staff about an interpretation of something, so I'll just walk you through it a little bit, which is that currently the bylaw says that on the CMI district, in the MyPod overlay district, you need one parking space per 6 seats. So at at 48 seats, you need 8 parking spaces. And then we had 2 parking spaces for the apartment and 2 parking spaces for up to 7 employees. So that's 12 parking spaces just under with no relief. The lot has 4 parking spaces, and we also have an agreement for 3 parking spaces next door at the pharmacy, and we also have 5 parking spaces that are not only partially within the lot and partially in Chin's Way, so I know that those can't count without relief. But I would suggest that the MyPod overlay district language says that you can use on-street parking in a public way within 500 feet without relief, and that there are 13 parking spaces in the way that we could take advantage of. Those are the Cape Cod 5 and Stop and Shop parking spaces. So their disagreement with the staff was whether or not that required a special permit to take advantage of those or not. I don't think it does. They said that in practice it has been. We don't necessarily need to resolve that tonight, because if there's not agreement about it, we're not gonna get there tonight. So I'll set that aside for the moment, and just wanted to make that point for the record. The permitting for this property in 1999 from the zoning board provided for, the application was for a 32-seat restaurant with 4 employees in the apartments, and that required 10 parking spaces, of which 5 were waived. Those 5 spaces are the ones that overlap into Chin's Way. Okay, and that was done at 1 per 4 seats. The 2007 application saw an increase from the 28 seats that were approved. There were 32 applied for and 28 approved. It went an increase of 20 seats plus the same apartment plus up to 9 employees. So when you go from 4 employees to 9 employees, that actually goes from 1 parking space for employees to 3 parking spaces for employees. And the board granted that waiver with based on the provision of 6 off-site parking spaces by lease, which only which dealt with the issues that were being called for there, the additional employees and the additional seats. Just for informational purposes, there was a 2015 permit for exterior seating. We are not seeking to operate under that permit. And then there was a 2017 permit, which was denied by this board and is under an argument about constructive grant. We are not seeking to operate under that permit either. So I would set those two aside. The 2007 special permit allowed for the additional seating upon the provision of 6 off-site parking spaces. My client currently has, and you have the information in your file, 3 off-site parking spaces at the pharmacy by agreement with the owner, Alan Bell, and those are clearly to be used in the evening. So I think that you could respond to the board that we are, to the board, select board, that we are in compliance with the parking that's needed based on 2 grounds. One, that some of the parking leases that were previously required have been replaced. And the other thing that I think that you could respond with is that the current applicant proposes to have less employees, which 7 employees at peak shift is only 2 spaces, and 9 employees at peak shift was 3 spaces. So we are down the need for a space there. And then the second thing is that the bylaw has been changed since the permitting was previously done. It used to be 1 per 4 seats, and now it's 1 per 6. So that's a reduction of necessary parking from 12 spaces to 8 spaces. So even though we're providing 3 less leased spaces, we are also triggering 1 less space from employees, and the zoning code itself has reduced the requirement by 4 spaces. So that is a net loss of 3 lease spaces, but a net gain of 5 regulatory change, or 5 spaces through the change of the employees and the change of the zoning code. So I would suggest that under the current calculation of 12 needed spaces, we are good because we have the 4 spaces in front and the 5 spaces on the side, and the 3 spaces from Mr. Bell. And the 5 spaces that are along Chin's Way have already been approved by waiver by this board. Whether or not there are legal rights in them and who has ownership and control of them is a separate legal issue that is not before this board. You don't have the authority or jurisdiction to decide it. I'm sure you have no interest in it. So you don't need to decide whether or not to grant relief for those spaces because you already have. So I think really the question before you is the provision of 3 lease spaces in conjunction with the reduction of employees and in conjunction with the change in the zoning code that reduces the need by 4 spaces sufficient? If you followed any of that, I congratulate you.
So, Leslie, I would love you to chime in a little bit because I'm a little concerned about the MyPod thing. Because theoretically, just from where I sit, I mean, you could count a public parking space for almost 4 different businesses right in a row, based upon that. So I'm just really confused.
So our interpretation of that section and the way it has been applied numerous times since the MyPod was created in 2003 is that you can justify a waiver of your on-site parking requirement by saying that you have parking spaces available within 500 feet, but you still have to get a special permit to waive the on-site spaces, or you create the public parking spaces that are 500 feet. It has not been applied that, you automatically get to count spaces within 500 feet that you didn't create. So it's kind of confusing, but you have to create the spaces in order to automatically get credit for them. Otherwise, you need a special permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, just for the record, I'm not sure I agree with that, but it kind of doesn't matter because I'm not asserting it in this case because we're not going to come to agreement on it.
All right.
Interesting point, though.
If you read it, you have to read it 7 or 8 times to come to your own conclusion of what it says. So it's not terribly surprising that you could read it more than one way.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking if there's a business, and that might hold true, and then another business gets created, and now that the two businesses are sharing those same 5 spots, and then another business comes, I know there's a lot around the corner, if they create a business and they use that, before you know it, there are 10 businesses all using those same 5 parking places.
Sure, and that's how it works downtown. But again, I'm
does.
asserting that for the record, but I don't want to use that as the basis to suggest that you should respond to the select board tonight because Leslie tipped me off that we were not going to be in agreement on it. So if I wanted to go forward with it, we weren't going to get anywhere. Yeah. Now we may or may not, deal with that later, but I do think that under the special permit that exists, you could respond to the select board and say, under the special permit that exists, there has been 1, the provision of a lease, and 2, a change in the number of employees, and 3, a change in the regulation that provides for sufficient parking under that permit.
And just to comment on the lease. In the lease from Allen, not the other from Roasted that was previously, it's very general, to put it blunt. It doesn't really have a term. It doesn't have a price and which I don't care about how much money. But it has a specific time, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
That nothing starts before then. So I would really be cautious about that because if for some reason that the building sold and the new owner did not, in effect, redo the lease, in essence, you're losing those 3 parking places there.
Yeah, and if we lost those parking spaces, the planning board under the regulation has the right to call us in and say you're not in compliance. I agree that letter is light. I think it's legally sufficient, and it could certainly and should be better. But I think it, for your purposes, is legally sufficient.
A question.
Yeah, please.
If the board were to provide such a response, how is that, or I should say it a different way. The fact that you're choosing to rely on the fact that you have fewer employees, does this parking waiver then, or our response run with that property? What happens when a new tenant comes in and they have more employees?
So if someone...
Are we bound by having said that?
Can only have 4. That a new business can only have 4 instead of 7.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's saying, right?
Well, no one could exceed the current up to 9 employees without getting an amendment to that special permit. But because we're less, you could say, and because the regulation has changed, you could say that there has been essentially a decrease in the number of spaces under lease, but that they're in compliance because the regulation has changed. And in fact, the regulatory change eliminates the need for 4 parking spaces and only 3 less lease spaces. So the employees is only another issue on top of that. But this letter would not, your response to the select board does not amend the special permit and can't really actually be relied on for permitting purposes. It's just a response on whether or not you think that the applicants are in compliance. That's all you're being asked is, you
Does
know,
does the letter in any way act as a, gotta remember back in law school what we called it, when you made a statement that's on the record and that somebody would try to rely on the fact that we wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen saying you had parking?
so
I don't know what
I don't
that's
know,
called.
I don't know if you mean estoppel or something
Yeah,
like that.
estoppel, yeah.
I suspect, and I'm not really giving you legal advice, but I suspect you would then be precluded from taking the opposite position later, that the regulatory change doesn't matter or that lease isn't any good. But you're not amending the special permit or creating any right. You're just saying that the facts presented here are different, but they satisfy the permit. Which frankly was not the case at the time before. The special permit required leases and licenses, and then those were allowed to expire, and for a few years, this property was operated not in compliance. And my client is proposing to come into compliance through A, the provision of some additional spaces, and B, the observation that there is a regulatory change that negates some of these needed.
Steve, I just want to, can we go back
Sure.
to like the beginning a little bit,
Yes.
please? This is the west end at 130 Pleasant.
Yeah.
It really is. Okay, so this application, they're not going to have lunch. We know that, right?
Correct.
Are they going to have, what are the hours of operation for this again?
Dinner?
Yeah, for dinner, like is it 6 to midnight or whatever?
Something like that,
right?
yeah.
So basically, this is the same as what was here before without lunch. I mean, I don't want to say exactly the same. I know you have 4 less
Yeah,
employees. I get that.
we're
I'm talking
proposing-
about just in general.
Yeah, we're proposing to operate under the terms of that 2007 permit,
Right.
which were just dinner, and
Reading that
permit
right now,
actually
I
includes brunch.
I'm just trying to put it in wicked simple terms without getting into the whole way and the Willie House stuff and all that. This area of the island is changing. I don't think that's even anyone would question. Even my biggest detractors wouldn't deny and say I was wrong about that. This applicant is just trying to plug into a building that's been fixed 1,000,000 times. It's beautiful inside in there, okay? There's going to be on-street parking, more of it, at some point in this area.
Sure.
It just hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. I think getting these spaces in that like little thing about sharing on street, it's funny. I think my point I brought up at the last meeting is at night, there's less people shopping at Stop and Shop. I mean, I don't think that's, you know,
There's
not
plenty of
true.
parking in the Stop and
There's
Shop
tons of
parking space.
parking. Everybody uses parking from somebody else
Yeah, and the bank.
that doesn't have a permit to park at Cape Cod 5,
Yeah.
but they certainly can park there and walk. To have it on paper in an agreement, just to say I have it, to make the permit satisfied, I think they've made a huge effort here to get someone to do that, because no one else has been able to do it under this, in this place, as far as in this building, at least since I can remember. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't, I feel, I'm still thinking back when we denied lunch, when we you know, and then here comes the bowling alley application, you know, and it's like, here we are, we're just fighting over these spaces that technically everybody in Nantucket uses for something else.
Yeah.
But we're trying to make this one little business comply with a special permit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just trying to look at it from a
I-
practical point of view than all the
Yeah, from a
stuff.
practical point of view,
It spreads
there's
out in the
100
area.
parking spaces at Stop and Shop, and that's where a lot of people go, including me.
Yeah.
But you know what I think is really important to note, since you're going back, if you look at the 1999, even the 2007 permit, they say that they're being approved because they want to increase the vitality of the businesses in this area, which,
Yeah.
as you all know, 10, 15 years ago, there was nothing going on over there. And what we're now dealing with is the success of the transformation of
Yes.
the MyPod.
No, that's right. And
I got
continued
here in
success.
2004. It didn't look like this, and before me, it didn't look like this at all. And this has been a permit has been in place for 20 years for a restaurant to do dinner and weekend brunch. 20 years. And in the time it was put in with the idea of we want to encourage this use in this area. And the only thing in front of you is, hey, they seem to have not kept up with the parking leases. Is that an issue? And what I'm asking you to do is say, it's not an issue because they have one lease for 3 spaces and the regulation has changed to eliminate 4 spaces. And although we're not granting a change to the permit, we do note that there is less employees, which would require less permits, less parking. So that's what I'm asking you to do, is to say the 20 years ago when we said we really like to see a restaurant here, we still mean that, and it's really just a matter of whether or not these leases are in place. This is not a new use to make a more burdensome use of someplace that otherwise hasn't been happening.
Mr. Chair. While I commend the new owner in trying to get this to work, I still have some concerns, because if you look over the 20 years and you're thinking it hadn't created any problems, things change. And in those 20 years, this particular spot, a restaurant, has also increased seating outside, inside, and has gotten parking waivers. And also the business that is, and I see there is one person, a business owner here, that has offered some criticism. So it has drastically affected the other business that has that meets the required parking. So to say that it was here for 20 years and everybody was all friendly and it worked together is not necessarily the entire picture, because there have been problems, and that's what I'm trying to look at right now. By approving this, I see a few things. Now, while I agree the Stop and Shop has plenty of parking in the evening, I've been there, but also the lease is for 8 o'clock and on. So if the hours of operation for 6 o'clock, there's a 2-hour window between 6 and 8 that we really don't account for the parking. And I'm not trying to, find a fault in it. I'm actually just trying to see where there's an issue that might be resolved. And I still, I'd like to see if there's any comment from the abutter that has previously listed.
I'm sure she strongly disagrees.
Okay.
Yeah. Before we do that, though, I just want to check back
Sorry.
in. No, that's okay. I just want to check back in with Leslie and/or Holly and see if there's anything else that needs to be looked at.
I think at this point, let's just hear from the public and go from there.
I do want to note, just for the record, that we're in agreement. This is not a public hearing, and there's
That's correct. Yeah, I want that to be clear, too. Hi, Rhoda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Rhoda Wyman, I represent Patrick Ridge, owner of 24 and 5 Chins Way. And just to be a little bit clearer, and so that all of you recall this, we've had 19 years of discussion before this board and prior to this board, the zoning board, about the parking in this location. 19 years we've been going back and forth on this. And I strongly disagree with Mr. Cohen's representation about the 2007 Planning Board decision. It was very clear in the 2007 decision that there had to be leases. In the 2007 decision, they got an increase of 48 seats with no additional on-site parking, but with a decision based on a parking agreement with Alan Bell at the time, which clearly states that if that parking agreement for any reason went away, that they were right back to this board for a modification. That never happened. From the 2007 decision on, no one ever came back here to modify. They never got additional parking. At this point in time, they have 4 spaces in front and a 2-sentence letter, which is hardly a lease, from Alan Bell, agreeing to a 1 year, and there it is on, right above you, 1 year. So the 2007, if you want to go back and look at that and enforce that, that's fine. We need leases that require that they will meet their 12 spaces. Now, just so this board is very clear, I'd like you to understand that my client offered this applicant as many spaces in his lot as she is required to have before this board. And that's in writing. I sent a copy of it to Mr. Reed. I sent a copy of it to town council so that, and to Leslie and Andrew, so that everybody is aware that we offered as many spaces for $1 a year. And the quid pro quo in that was that this litigation is dropped, and the litigation's a result of the two decisions that this board made in 17 and 18, saying that there were only 4 spaces and turning them down, and because they didn't get recorded in time, they didn't get filed with the town clerk in time, that was the whole litigation. So we offered them as many spaces as they need for $1 a year, with the understanding that the litigation is dropped and the constructive approvals are no longer in effect. And I believe they turned that down, although nobody even got back to me to tell me that. I only learned that from Mr. Cohen's email the other day to everyone. So the owner of the property's attorney never got back to me and told me they turned it down. And that's still on the table. If she needs these additional spaces, Mr. Ridge is happy to give them to her. But, you know, we want to go back to the 2017 and 18 decision. But if you want to go with the 2007 decision, it's really clear that they have to be leases in effect, and there aren't. And to say that it's a matter of right to use those spaces in the public way, it's not a matter of right, it's by special permit. And if you read the Stop and Shop decision and the other decisions in this district, it was never a matter of right. They had to get a special permit. So, you know, I see two options at this juncture. I think that this either gets continued and they file for a special permit, and then it's up to the board whether they want to grant that, or they come back and make an agreement with us, and we'll rent them as many spaces as they need for $1 a year, and the litigation's dropped and the constructive approvals are no longer in place. And I think that's more than a generous offer. I mean, this has been going on for so many years, and we'd really like to resolve it. My client really would like to help the tenant. You know, I think she didn't have good information when she signed up with this in the first place, and I think that it would be really helpful if she could get approval and start a business. But and we will give her those spaces if we can come to an agreement. But I do not agree that it's a matter of right. And, you know, those spaces at night, sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. But that's not what this should be. It should be either a special permit or she should be able to provide the spaces. And that's, you know, where we are with it.
Okay, thank you. Board members, anything else? Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I just want to note, again, I don't think that we need the spaces. You know, obviously, I have no control over what the owner, landlord does with the litigation or not. Obviously, they're not accepted that condition. But because we only need 12 spaces under the current regulations, and we are providing 4 plus 5 that you've approved, plus 3 from the Allen Bell spots, I think that we are in compliance. We're not seeking a waiver. This is, you know, this hearing doesn't seek a waiver.
Yeah, through the chair.
He keeps referring to the 5 that were approved, but the 5 were never approved. You know, he's talking about the spaces on Chin's Way. They've never had exclusive use for those spaces. And again, that's going to go to the land court, and that's going to be a decision that the land court will have to decide upon. That isn't for this board, but they have never, ever had exclusive use of those spaces. And I've been dealing with this, as you know, for several years.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't say that we have exclusive use of them. I said that in both of the 2009 and 1999 and 2007 decisions, the planning board specifically refers to them as being spaces overlapping in Chin's Way, and that a waiver is granted for those spaces. That grant is language mentioning, calling it out, is in both decisions. And so what I'm saying is you've already granted that waiver. We have the 4 spaces that are on the lot. We have the 5 spaces that you've already granted a waiver for. We have the 3 spaces that we have under a lease. We have 3 less spaces than the prior, under lease than the prior applicant. However, the regulation has changed to eliminate 4 spaces. So that's what I'm asking you to do. Send a letter to the board that says that we have been provided with a lease equal to 3 spaces, and where the prior tenant had 3 more spaces, we don't think that those are needed because the regulation has eliminated the need for 4 of them. This is very complicated, but I think that's a simple response.
Okay. All right.
And our simple response is to not send a letter telling the select board that they've complied, because they haven't complied. And in order to comply, they have to provide and show you that they have 12 spaces, and they haven't shown you that.
All right, all right. The back and forth stops now. We've both heard your point. Thank you. You've both made your points. Okay.
God. See, I was
So-
right, the West End.
Mr. Cohen, are you going to modify your seating based upon the time that those spaces become available?
Wow.
So that, like, between 6 and 8, there's that much, and then after 8, since everything seems to be hinging on space, I just asked the question. I know it's 2 hours, but it's 2 hours.
So, trying to think of what that would look like. That would be
Kind of a little odd.
what?
Kind of a little, I know, but it's, I think, if you have the spaces for the entire time the place was open, that's one thing. And are you doing Sunday brunch as well, too? Is that gonna happen?
The permit provides for it. We could voluntarily decide not to do it and agree
All
not
right,
to do it.
because here we go again, you technically won't have those 3 spaces at all for a Sunday brunch thing. Now, I'm only bringing this up just from a.
And the board could clearly assert that because those spaces don't apply during the brunch, that there would be no compliance if we were serving brunch.
Or it would be less.
Right.
It would be less.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of one of the problems I just see that you have floating out there with this. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jill Sally, obviously.
Hi.
So I had this business downtown for 6 months. I did a very large late night business.
Yep.
Before dinner, after work crowd. If it was less seats, from 5 till 8,
Yep.
I'm willing to do that. I assume I'm going to get some spillage from the chicken box, also late night.
Yeah.
I agreed to not do Sunday brunch
Okay.
as a courtesy to my neighbor when
Got it.
I was applying for the liquor license.
Okay.
So I'm also willing to do that.
Okay.
As a year-round business also, I know that once fall hits, Sunday brunch is something that people year-round like to do. So that'll stink, but I'm willing to do that as a courtesy. I just, whatever we need to do to move this along.
The reality is that either there's a permit we can operate under or there isn't. And, to go get a new special permit to be open for this summer, this business is not going to be open. There'll be a vacant site there this summer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that does
not the right thing.
anything for anybody. Nor do I think it's necessary because, not that it's your fault or your problem, but there is a permit under which we could operate.
Yep.
Now, I do want to say something. Aside from applying for a special permit, you could reopen the special hearing under your authority to confirm the parking and issue new conditions under the 2007 permit, which, would be another way to handle that if you felt you wanted to. Or we could also apply for a new special permit.
But this is currently before land court, right?
No.
Or due to.
Well,
No, I'm sorry, I thought it was.
The 2000 and the post 15 permits are before the land court, but nothing that we're
Okay,
talking
there we
about
go.
is.
All right, just so it's clear, I'm sorry.
And there's no action about the real estate currently at the land court, right?
No, it's before the land court or the.
Just the permits, yeah.
The 17 and 18 decision.
Okay. Did you? I'm sorry.
No, it's just a question. No,
Okay.
I'm ready.
Can I just say one more thing? I think that the interpretation of the 2007 decision needs to really be looked at, because my interpretation of it and the way we have been dealing with it is that there has to be a lease in place under that decision that would accommodate the total of 12 spaces. the 4 in the front, the 3 that they have from Bell, if you want to consider that a lease, and, the 5 additional spaces. So they're not there. They don't have that. Again, we want to help her. We really do, and that's why we've offered her parking. And
If I may, the parking, I went back to them.
Through the chair.
They said no, with that parking agreement, no lunch, no brunch, and dropping litigation, of which I have no control over. It's not my litigation.
Yeah.
My attorney went back and said, I'm willing to give up lunch, I'm willing to give up brunch, but I cannot do anything about the litigation. That's the landlord, that's the building owner. So I did offer to take the spaces with what I could control.
Sure.
Which was lunch and brunch. So,
no, we don't disagree with that.
Okay. All right, so hold on. Mr. Reed, please.
As you know, I represent the property owner, and I just want to clarify the
Yes,
status of this matter in the land court. Specifically, initially, town council had challenged the effectiveness of the constructive grants, of the two constructive approvals of the 2 applications that we made that were acted upon by the planning board, and then the decision not filed on a timely basis last year. After review, town council dropped objection to that. They determined that, in fact, the constructive grant had taken place and that those permits were approved.
Yeah.
You now have what's pending in the land court at the present time is not an appeal by us, but rather an appeal by the town, by the planning director, from the grant of those special permits by the constructive action.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you have something, Ron? No, I thought I saw your hand up, that's all.
We want this to end. So,
I hear you.
I think that for you to go back to the select board and say they meet the parking requirement isn't really true. They don't meet the parking requirement. If you want to say that they can park in the right of way, and you want to consider that, that's different than the other decisions that you've made. All the other decisions say that they do need a special permit. I think that we want to be helpful. I wish they would, take us up on our offer, but they're not going to do that.
Correct.
The litigation is definitely beyond this board. We'd like to see it dropped. Planning board made a mistake, and we've been paying for it ever since. But the bottom line is that, we'd like to see her open. We don't want brunch, and we don't want the 6 to 8 is a problem because there is no parking there. So I don't know how you'd want to handle that, but if you want to make a decision on it tonight, then, I think that obviously it's not solving the parking issue, but if we have no brunch and no lunch and we come back in a year and, look at this again, because this document that I'm reading it, that it's for a year from Alan Bell.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Board members, is there any other discussion? All right. What would you all like to do? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, back to the 2007 decision.
Yes, ma'am.
Whether or not the spaces that are very partially located on the property and more out on Chin's Way are, legally usable or not. I mean, that's something they're going to have to work with.
Correct.
The very first page of the decision on the findings says 6 spaces are proposed to be available on a property within 500 feet. And the applicant's only talking about 3. So I think, that's the number for the number of leased spaces that would be necessary to comply with the 2007 decision.
So you're saying 3 spaces additional?
Well, the decision says 6, and he's proposing 3. So it doesn't say that in the conditions, but it says it on the very first page of the decision.
Can we?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that's right, that there were 6.
Excuse me, Mr. Cohen, hold. Go ahead. Did you?
From my standpoint, I've heard enough discussion. And this is obviously very complicated. I'm not privy to all of the last 19 or 20 years of what's going on. I have not read the 2007 decision. There seems to be a lot of questions here, and I'm certainly not prepared to approve or sign on to a letter to the Board of Selectmen when I don't understand the consequences of what we'd be doing, number one, nor do I even have enough information or have I educated myself enough to understand what side I agree with. And I don't think, from my standpoint, additional arguments by and among the lawyers isn't going to change that for me. So I know where I sit on this, and I'm not prepared to approve such a letter. Mm-hmm. If we want to continue it and and get all of the documents out and let the board go through them all and come to some decision, or whether we would need help in doing that, that's possible. But I'm just simply not prepared to say yes tonight.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with Fritz. I'm not prepared to give any approval tonight. To continue to, I know everyone's anxious to end this, and maybe I'm just really simplifying it, but I see a willing tenant that wants to accept the terms. I see an abutter that has a resolution that wants to give the terms, and I see an unwilling owner. And I think by agreeing and giving the approval to the selectmen to go forth, that really kind of weighs heavily on the owner to continue the lawsuit, even though her business now is going to get rent, or her building will be getting rent. So she's kind of, the way I see it, she's creating the problem. And I don't want to give that position where she's able to continue to create the problem. And I'm sorry, I'm just simplifying, but that's how I see it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Very sad. This place could be closed for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. This isn't an easy street in Schooners, is it? I don't think so. I mean, arguing about parking drives me nuts. I'm sorry. I know why those 5 spaces are a question because of the layout and the plans we looked at from Willie Howe's and all that, which was just wild when I saw all that. You know, and it's sad because all the improvements that your client has made to an existing mess back there, I mean, it was a mess. I mean, there's nobody that would deny that. It's just that this place is a different mess. This is a paper mess, not a mess, you know? And I've never heard the on-street parking argument made before till tonight about that. That's very interesting. Why don't you dig that up? That's good. I mean, because there's going to be more. You know, there is. I mean, other attorneys could make these same points, Rhoda, you know, on both sides of these issues, whether it's, I mean, it's, you know, I just never thought when we got rid of parking requirements in town that we'd be arguing about parking like this. This is like splitting hairs. Every area of that section of the town is used by everybody to park for the chicken box, to park for Sophie's, to park for, I mean, people walk to Stop and Shop from parking spaces over there. I see it. I mean, it's funny, you know, to look at that. Then we've got the on-street that we talked about at the public hearing 2 years ago, getting the owner, as I don't fully agree with what John and Fritz just said, but I agree with the owner part being a problem, not necessarily with the lawsuit part, but with the giving up the front space to the town and making angle parking. That's the answer. Right to West Creek Road. Should be all angle parking, and it will be someday, I bet you, but not tomorrow, unfortunately. So, you know, we don't have the votes tonight, but this place has got to get open. This is sad. Well, okay, it all sounds so simple, but I don't think any of it is. Really don't. So I like to track every single car with a beeper and know where it's parking and where the people are going to prove the point that everybody uses all these spaces.
Yeah.
But you can't. So.
Yeah, you and I are going to agree to disagree here because I've actually seen it with my own two eyes where people actually do drive from like Cape Cod 5 over to Stop and Shop over to. It's the weirdest thing in the world. Weirdest thing in the world. And I have no explanation outside of it's like, oh my God, what a walkable neighborhood. See, the problem here is that I think during the winter at certain times, you're fine. As we get into past shoulder season, into peak season, back into another shoulder season again, it becomes pretty busy around that area. And that's something that, again, this board, I think, has to be able to look at. Now, I'm not going to be the first person to say we should always plan for peak, because, my God, that would just mean seas of asphalt. But I think you have to plan reasonably for that as well, too. And therein, I think, lies the quandary with the shoulders. Because you've got, and maybe that's just a function of very successful businesses as well, too.
We could bring up the Kitties argument. Kitties was in trouble
So,
at the beginning until they got everyone loosened up and across the street. Nobody was giving them one space. And now they've got tons of spaces because they're all closed.
So with that,
yeah, those those additional spaces actually do benefit them by having them because they are actually getting utilized.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is,
I'm sorry.
It's the same point about this place. The pharmacy closes at what time?
In the summer at 8 o'clock, in the winter at 7.
7. Okay, so those businesses across from Kitty's close before, all probably around 5. Okay,
Right.
The dentist isn't open at night, so it's just I'm looking at what's open and what's closed in this area. Cape Cod 5. I didn't even think about Cape Cod 5. First time it's even been brought up. That's a whole parking lot there with nobody using it at night.
No, you're right.
It's not too far away either.
At night, you're absolutely right.
So I'm in agreement with Nat that it would be a shame not to have this business open. And I don't want to put it off another month, and I'm sure the people do not want to. But I'd be willing to continue it because if the parties agree, just because I think the key is to speak to the owner to see there is a resolution, and it looks like we have two parties that would consider it, and this business could be opened, and she could be getting the rent, and it wouldn't be shut down for the summer. So it might be a viable option, but would a month make a difference in the next meeting?
Mr. Reed, representing.
If I might comment, as you know, I represent the owner.
Yes, sir.
The litigation, as I've said, is brought by the town. We can't drop the litigation. It's been brought against us. We would love nothing more than for the town to drop the litigation, and which we believe is meritless, but that's beside the point. At that point, we stand on the fact that we have the relief of the 2 existing special permits constructively granted last year. Another issue that was raised was by Nat was the question of being able to improve the whole parking in the area by using angle parking going through there. That subject came up, during the course of of one of those hearings last year, and I think we indicated we were more than willing to discuss all of that with the town and to work with it. Nothing came of it, but it's totally separate from this proceeding. We're more than willing to have discussion with the town about a way to accomplish that.
Especially with the fire station, just the situation.
All right.
Sir.
So, I just to go back to the question before the board from the select board is whether or not you think that there's compliance. So, you could say that the original permit required a lease for 6 spaces, and that those 6 spaces do not currently appear to be provided, Or, as I would request, you could say that 3 of those spaces are required and 4 of them are no longer necessary under the regulatory changes that have been in place since the MyPod district was adopted. I think those or any other choices you have in front of you are sort of what you could do, or you could just decline to respond to the select board at all if you want to. This is not a, regulatory matter. It's a request, informational issue.
I feel like
And
we're
on
on
that specifically, you could simply inform the selectmen that the planning board has no objection to the issuance of the license without expounding.
No position on it.
I think you're about to get a different viewpoint.
That's not what the select board asked. They asked if there's compliance, and of course, you can't say there is because there isn't, so.
Okay.
Can I just say one thing?
Sir, yes.
I would really like you guys to get her open. And,
Yeah,
I just, my biggest issue is that she doesn't provide parking on Sundays, certainly. And I made a very sincere offer. I just bought another piece, so it wasn't like I was, I wasn't gonna start counting my parking spaces 3 times when I was offering her. I'm creating another lot of 22 more parking spaces because of the severity of the parking over there. I really would like you guys to get Jill open, and I'll deal with Arthur, and Rhoda and I will deal with Arthur separately in land court. But there's no way I can have a single car, during the brunch time period. And, I'm not happy about the 8 o'clock. Because it's a fake lease. But that's, it's like, but at this point, I just want her to get open, and I don't want any cars in my parking lot. She didn't own the parking when we paved the road. She didn't own, they don't pay for plowing and sanding or any of it. And granted, it's all shared parking until it's someone else's expense.
Right.
It's been my expense for 7 years over there. And I just, like I said, I just purchased another, thing just so I can add more parking. So I disagree that, it should all just be shared, because it wasn't shared when I came in front of the board, and I had, I present with a lawyer and a surveyor showing measured spaces, and plans. That's not what they've done. And they basically just keep saying we don't need to do it. And, so I think it's an issue for land court, and I do want Jill to get open, but I there's no way I think that you guys should allow someone to open on Sundays when they don't possess any parking. And whether or not they think they're doing me a favor or that, I don't care. But, so.
Did I miss something, or
Voluntary.
you said you weren't open on Sundays, right?
Sunday, I won't do lunch or brunch any day of the week.
Okay. Patrick,
And also, I have reached out to Cape Cod.
can you come on down to the
Yeah.
microphone, because this gets recorded on TV, please? I appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
I have reached out to Cape Cod 5 to get some parking.
Yeah.
It's gone to their legal team
Yeah.
where it's sitting.
Sure.
The chicken box would have given me every parking space, but their legal advised them not to.
Yeah.
They want me in there just like Patrick, because it's only gonna, obviously, we all know, improve the neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. But I've reached out to as many people as I can to try to get
Sure.
as much parking. There's just only so many people that I can ask, so.
All right, great. Now, I just wanted to be clear, because since it was being brought back up. All right.
How much time do we have? What's the next meeting, 11th? I don't even know what
The
the next day.
the next meeting is on the 8th. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
I hate to break up the agreement that's sort of going on, but I just, want to remind the board that you did vote to take enforcement action
Right.
against this very property that
Exactly.
you're discussing, and that was only a few months ago. So just
So-
keep that in
Yep.
mind, that you've, to some degree, taken a position on the parking.
And is that pending? What's the status of that?
Well, the board didn't pursue it because there wasn't a business operating, but we did send a letter to the zoning enforcement officer asking them to proceed with enforcement action.
Yep.
This-
So, basically, trying to encapsulate this, the spaces that Patrick's offering are really contingent upon the landlord agreeing to it. Is that the bottom line here?
No, so
No, I just need to ask because it seems like there's who has the right? No, I'm just saying who in this equation has the rights to be able to engage in the process? Is it this woman right here before us who owns the business, okay, is leasing the business, I should say, or is it the landlord? You see where I'm going with this? I'm trying to track into who has the ability to make these things happen, like with Island Pharmacy.
So
Yeah.
there's 4 parking spaces that are legal and complying in the front.
Right.
Okay. Then there's 5 parking spaces in Chin's Way that a waiver has already been granted on. Then there's 3 parking spaces that are under lease. And so what Patrick is saying, I think, is that he's willing to give the 3 more parking spaces under lease if Arthur's client were to comply with it, agree to his terms.
Okay, so there we go. You've answered my question in a very roundabout way, is that it has to be the landlord.
What I presented, and I sent it to Mr. Reed.
Yeah.
With all of the terms, and it has, with town council, with Leslie and Andrew, and part of that was that we want the constructive approvals to go away.
Right.
And that's part of this.
okay. Okay.
See where
Leslie just gave me a little more
Okay.
clarity here.
Go.
Okay, so Arthur, I'm going to ask you okay, when we denied lunch to the previous proprietor of the property, right? That was a different application. They were asking for lunch, okay?
Yeah.
This client, this owner or this potential business owner is not asking for lunch. So the lawsuit, because of the.
However, we consider that we have valuable property rights as a result of the grant of the constructive approval.
I understand that, but that was a
We're not willing to
mistake.
give those up.
Yeah, but
All right.
you should, Arthur, because it was all a mistake how that happened, the constructive grant. We know that. We don't like to talk about that.
But
So
the fact is it happened.
my point is, but this applicant is not asking for what the previous business owner was asking for. That's the catch
However,
to this whole
my
thing now
client
that I
owns the
understand.
property. She's not the tenant.
So she wants to hold this
And we-
constructive
we
grant
hope
like
this
she's
tenant-
going to go away.
Whoa.
So-
The two of you stop arguing.
No, I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to get clear now.
I can only listen to one of you at a time.
I didn't understand it until now. Like this whole thing my light came on. Okay, sorry.
Mr. Chair.
We
may I-
hope this tenant will be here for many years. However, tenants, in the nature of things, come and go.
Yeah. So
My
they want this for
client owns
somebody
the
else.
property at the end of the day.
I see.
And we have to advise her very strongly to protect her property rights.
So is there a way that we can make a decision to allow the tenant to open up and Patrick to give the spaces, as he was saying before, and just let the lawsuit take its own course?
No.
I don't think that's the point.
With the tenant willingly signing that she wouldn't open for Sunday or brunch or lunch. So in essence, those parking places wouldn't be used, and she would be able to operate from an evening business only. And then the lawsuit, or what Arthur's saying, would take its course in court.
Well, but we want the constructive approvals to go away.
Yeah.
But we can't do that.
There's a lot of power with that.
Well, if the lawsuit goes away, the constructive approvals go away. That's
But
how,
we
she
can't
doesn't
take
want
the
to do
lawsuit
that.
away.
She's only interested, what I'm getting back is that she's interested in long-term, not short-term. And that's unfortunate.
Because
That's
the
right.
business will be shut down.
That's right, and that is a shame.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because,
No, I get it.
my client would really like to see her open, and that's
Yeah.
why we've offered what we have, so.
And I think
Mind-boggling.
that's where the board is struggling with right now. I really do.
Would like to open it.
Okay, now I get it. Now.
Okay.
I didn't catch that little piece.
Yeah.
The
So-
hold
but
in.
it's an
This is
important-
like freezing RC too for lunch. Can't believe it.
As much as I'd like to repeat myself, I won't.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I think that the simple question from the board, select board, is before you, and you can give it a simple answer, which is that, you know, either you're not prepared to respond at this time, or you find that there is compliance, or you don't think that there's compliance at this time, or that you have no position on it, as in terms of the liquor license, not the parking.
I have a position.
Respectfully,
It's just not favorable.
Yeah.
Right, respectfully, I think we would lose a lot of respect by having no position. So this board
saying
needs to make a decision.
At a certain point, right, this
no
board
brunch
needs to
Sunday.
make a
Yes.
decision.
Yes.
You know, tailored towards the question
Do you-
asked from the select board.
Do you need more time?
I feel
Or
like
do
I'm
you-
cornered
or
and
do you-
I know which position I'm going to.
All right, fine, there you go. So because if two of you were wavering, then I would see something a little bit different. You still want more time though, right, to digest?
More time, no, all I'm saying is it's either more time or we just simply say, we can't write that letter.
Well, I think you're at a juncture of having to, I think this board's at a juncture of having to make a decision one way or another at this point. Because I'm not hearing anything further from the attorneys to move any other propositions forward at this point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
So I guess what I would say is if the board, and it doesn't seem to be inclined, if the board is not inclined to agree that the application would be in compliance, then I guess there's no harm in continuing to the next meeting, which I don't really want to do, but to see if we can come into compliance.
Right.
There's no harm in that.
Essentially, they need 3 more spaces for dinner.
Not
Right?
just that.
That's
There's
3
a-
spaces.
There's a more complicated web. than
Well,
just-
no, but that's what,
So,
Yeah.
5 more?
There's-
Okay.
No.
The 5 are up for
The
discussion.
2007 decision had 6 lease spaces, and we
Right,
provided
so-
3, so we would need 3 more.
board members, okay, you know what?
If they're willing to continue, I'm certainly willing to do
All right,
that.
if they're willing to continue, but I think what's inherent upon this board right now, and you're gonna have to do this either now or at the next meeting, you got one say in 3, you got one say in 5. And Leslie, I think it would be appropriate at this point if I could poll the board to be able to give them a definitive answer of what they need to see. Would that be appropriate?
Are you talking about in terms of spaces?
Spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Because this is going, I don't think we're going to get agreement betwixt the two here at this point. And I'm just feeling like the board should be able to issue some direction now to that.
So that would be something different than the 6 spaces in the 2007 decision?
There you go. That's exactly where I'm going.
I think that maybe the staff between now and the next meeting could do a chart for you that would show what the permits allow and what the permits require, and that they don't have to do it at the table here.
Okay, yeah, my only concern here is I'm just afraid that if you say 3, one other person says 5, someone else says 6, we're going to be going round about that as well, too.
I
You hear
agree.
where I'm going?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's,
But I think what has to happen if we continue this to the next meeting is Mr. Reed needs to talk to his client.
Thank you.
That's what has to happen, because that's the key to all of this. You know what we want to do. We want to make it happen. We want to help her. I think Mr. Cohen's in the same place, and I think Mr. Reed needs to talk to his client.
and that will be between him and his client. I hear you. I hear you. We can't force him to do anything.
So I would.
But I think again, he's sat through the process beginning to end.
No, my strongest advice to the client is, in fact, not to waive any of her rights under the constructive grants.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
So I would ask the board to continue to the next meeting and to request from the staff a summary of which parking spaces are conforming, which parking spaces are granted by the 1999 and 2000 decision, and how many lease spaces are required. Is that acceptable?
Okay.
I think so,
Okay.
because we'll let you, that will become a number that will be validated through the board, through staff. I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry I had to be at another meeting and I would abstain from voting on anything tonight. I would just pose to Mr. Reed a hypothetical question to think about with your client. Do you think there's, in effect, a responsibility of the landlord not to engage in constructive eviction of a tenant with a lease if the landlord is standing in the way of their ability to open this business? And you don't have to answer that. I just thought if you...
You're right. I'm not completely following you. I'm sorry.
Okay, well...
Can you have that offline?
No, I don't want to have it offline, if
All
you
right.
don't mind. I'm just... you're the chair, so I defer to you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not. Go ahead. Let's run it and see where it goes at this point.
I understand what
My
you're saying.
question,
Thank you.
all my question to Mr. Reed is whether he would consider, it's just an observation, and you don't have to answer, as I say, would you consider your client's position if her refusal to move ahead in some fashion with a compromise here basically evicts a tenant with whom she has a lease? And that's just a question for you to think about. You don't have to answer it. I don't want to have any offside conversation about anything. That's why I just say it here, but that's just a question.
Okay.
All right.
So, can I make a motion?
Yeah, that's okay. Good. You're right on my same page.
Okay. I'd move that we continue the matter till the next meeting and ask staff in the interim for the next meeting to advise the board as to the number of legal parking, is that what I want to say?
Yeah.
The number
Yeah.
of legal parking spaces that are presently provided for under the 2007 agreement?
There's several decisions, so we'll
Under the
just pay a
several,
chart.
Decision.
under the
Yeah.
related, the relevant decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
just to me, okay, so that motion's made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's now made in second. The only thing I'm going to do too is if you have any questions about what's going on at this point between now and the next meeting, please avail yourself to staff to be brought totally up to speed on it. Because I think that's an important point, which I heard come up tonight. So I would just ask you to please make sure that happens. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you all.
Oh, boy. All right, we're back to,
We
Great
are
Harbor Yacht
going to
Club
go
now.
back to, yes, 1519, which is Great Harbor Yacht Club modification number 10 on Washington Street.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
this situation,
okay.
I'm pleased to say is the resolution of what had not been the best situation and is now going to be a much better one. So the planning board is likely aware that the original MCD permit for the Great Harbor Yacht Club required off-site parking at the old Gray Lady Marine repair and boat facility out on Nobodere Farm Road, or off Nobodere Farm Road, as ancillary event parking and for those kind of things, and for off-season storage. After that decision was issued, the Great Harbor Yacht Club acquired the old Nantucket Swim and Tennis Club, which it turned into a swim and tennis facility for its members. And that facility, which it then owned outright, provided more than sufficient off-site parking and winter storage for its boats. So Great Harbor Yacht Club has never actually used the Gray Lady Marine site for that purpose, but still maintains an easement over that land for that purpose, even though it's never been used. Secondly, because the boat haul and launch associated with this site is supposed to do both public and member services, there's a provision that says that if there's a change in the management or operations of the boat haul and launch service, that has to come back to the board. So what we have is a fine web of situation where those two are interlinked. So Gray Lady Marine is no longer going to be the boat haul launch operator at the Great Harbor site, which is for members and for the public, and in exchange wants a release of the easement on its land requiring the parking. We have an agreement for that to happen where a man named Eric Finger, who's in the business, runs Finger Boat Works, is going to step in and provide the public launch and public and member launch and boat haul services at Great Harbor Yacht Club, and Gray Lady Marine will no longer do that. And at the same time, Great Harbor will release to Gray Lady Marine the easement over its land and will then continue the ongoing off-site parking use of the swim and tennis club for that purpose as a substitute. So it all works out. And so those are the two things in front of you. One is to approve the change in the boat hall operator, and the other one is to approve the release of the easement over the Gray Lady land, Gray Lady Marine land. And if you wanted to require a substitution of the spaces at the swim and tennis club site, that would be fine, because that's currently how it's used. Sarah Alger's here. She represents Gray Lady Marine. I believe that there's a corresponding notation in their MCD that also mentions this parking, and I suspect that that also needs a relief, but I'm not here for that purpose. So those are the two things we're looking for approval for.
Question. Just a couple of clarifications. So when you're talking about the facility, the public facility at the Great Harbor Yacht Club, you're talking about the travel lift and on the right-hand side?
Correct.
Right? Okay. Yeah. So Gray Lady Marine's not going to operate that. That's going to be Eric Finger.
Correct.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the previously granted special permit, but when you say the release of the off-street parking requirements, parking
Events.
requirements for cars, for
Events.
employees, for boats, for what?
For cars, the original permit requires off-site parking. I think it's 42 or 44 spaces at the Gray Lady Marine site, which is off of Nobodere Farm Road, with the idea that if there were going to be events in the evening, that would be a large amount of parking that might not be provided at site, and that those would be used for as an off-site parking lot. That happens, but not at that site. It happens at the swim and tennis club, because the swim and tennis club closes at 5 o'clock, and then those parking spaces are available for use by the club. So the club has been operating that way, using its own spaces instead of the easement.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Leslie, Holly, anything you want to add or contribute to?
No, we recommend approval. I mean, it makes sense to move the off-site parking to a site owned by the yacht club.
Okay. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, so if anyone would like to comment on this? Seeing no
Move to
comment.
close.
Thank you. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
Move approval of the modification.
Second.
Discussion on that issue.
Could I just
Yes, ma'am.
ask clarification? It seems that since you, Mr. Cohen, offered to continue the proviso that there has to be off-site parking, it seems to me we'd want to be clear that we're expecting that, because if at some point you did something different with the swim and tennis club, that site might not be available, and with that volume of cars and that likelihood of events, it seems that we could reasonably expect to hold your client to that in the future. Did I understand that you agreed with that?
Yeah, we don't disagree with the condition to the decision that would justify the waiver
Good
based
point.
on the substitution.
Thank you.
It's a substitution, is what you're saying.
Yep. Okay. All right, so if there's no other discussion, yes, no? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So unless there's any other business before the board, just reminders at this point, annual town meeting, April 1st, 6 p.m. And then our next planning board meeting is scheduled till April 8th. And if there's nothing else.
I want to just make a statement.
Yes, sir.
When is the election?
The week after town meeting?
When's the election, the 9th?
It's the week after
It's
town
the
meeting.
ninth.
The ninth, right?
The ninth.
The ninth.
So,
Okay.
yeah, the
It's a
ninth.
Tuesday.
So we have one more meeting for the election, okay?
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry about the confusion with 130 Pleasant. And my referral to West Ender, for you all here, for all those years of it's the same argument. Neighbors want that to be a house, you know, back in the day. They just wanted to turn it to a house. That's, I couldn't help but
All right,
feel like
we've-
that. So I just, you know, I'm glad we were able to do something. It's just really, it just never ends.
You're
So I'm
starting to
just,
try.
I understand that. I'm just saying, I feel bad about when Judith came in late. It's been going on for so long.
Nat,
I just, you know.
Yeah, you started to track into some territory that
Yeah.
that is really before
Just
another public
thank
hearing.
everyone for dealing with it, that's all.
I do have a question semi-based on that, and from listening to the discussion.
On 130, all right,
Um,
I'm going to start closing that discussion down because I'm
Oh.
starting to feel really uncomfortable because
Okay.
we're
Yeah,
out of that territory
sorry.
now.
That's fine.
We are.
And everybody's gone.
Right, everyone's
No,
gone,
it
so
didn't
no
have
one's,
to do
no
with
one
them
really is the,
specifically,
yeah.
It's just the technical of whether.
All
the
right, so again, I'm,
landlord
as the chair respectfully, I really
Parking
want us to move on beyond that, please. Is there anything else, though?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to inform the board that may not know, last week, the select board and the NPC
Yeah.
approved the hazard plan, and,
Yeah,
that
it
good work
did.
is
Holly
being
did
done.
Good job,
So,
Holly.
Nice job.
inform the board.
Congrats, yeah, great work.
Okay, anything else?
Just one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
The Civic League is having their Meet the Articles Forum this Saturday. Andrew and I will be there to talk about any zoning articles that come up. Is that this Saturday?
This
The 23rd.
23rd.
Oh, 23rd, sorry, sorry, public,
23rd, my
23rd.
God.
Very prompt.
Thank you, Leslie.
I'm a week ahead. I think I sprung forward a little too far.
Yeah, that happens.
And then there is a public session on, I think, the 21st that's sponsored by the town as well. So if people want to look at that on the website to see,
Great.
dates and times for any articles.
Great. Okay. We good? Want to hang out for another?
Move
Yeah,
to
we're early.
adjourn.
Come on.
Did they change the clock?
We were. Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
You doing all right? Hanging in there.
I was thinking I could have move on my presentation.
Welcome back, Judith,
Oh, yeah.
were you away? Were you away?